All right. So thanks very much for inviting me tonight. My name's Jennefer Laidley. I'm with the Income Security Advocacy Center. Sorry about, we got the bit of a mix up there. We are we're part of the provincial community legal clinic system. We do systemic litigation, policy advocacy, and community organizing and development work, particularly in the areas of Ontario Works and ODSP, the social assistance system, but we also do some work on employment insurance and particularly in regards to migrant workers in Ontario. I'm the research and policy analyst at ISAC, but I'm going to try not to be too pointy-headed tonight. I only have 5 minutes, as you know, or I was assigned that. I'm going to try not to go over, so I've got very brief information on social assistance programs and 4 important recommendations for transformation. First, I want to tell you that there's a very important opportunity that we're in the midst of right now, and that is the Social Assistance Review that started in January of 2011. The Commission for the Review of Social Assistance in Ontario is about to make its final recommendations and issue its report in September. And I'll be talking about your role in ensuring greater economic security for people on social assistance at the end. I do want to say, however, that picking up from some of the comments that John made off the top, that one of the biggest problems that we saw in this provincial budget was a very insidious, we've been fighting to sort of hold the line for many years on social assistance. This year, we in fact saw that the government was prepared to make $78 million in direct cuts to benefits to people on social assistance. Yes, there was a 1% increase to basic rates, but they sort of gave with one hand and took with the other, as often happens. And it's the greatest cuts to social assistance benefits that we've seen since the Liberals took power. We have a campaign underway, particularly related to the housing supports benefits that were cut. This relates to some things that Michael Shapcott was talking about in terms of the long-term affordable housing strategy and local home housing and homelessness plans. If you go to our website, which is IncomeSecurity.org or SAReview.ca, you can be part of the campaign that we've got underway to try to reverse those cuts. So, this is your brief introduction to social assistance in Ontario. 1 slide, that's all you're going to get. There's 2 programs in social assistance. Ontario Works, which is thought of as a temporary program of last resort. People on Ontario Works receive, if you're a single person, you get $599 a month to live on. That's your basic needs and your shelter. Think about that in the context of the Ontario housing market, and particularly in the GTA. If you're a single parent with 2 children, you receive $1,165 a month. Now, these are maximum amounts. There are many folks who don't get this much based on housing costs and a variety of other issues. The $1,165 a month includes the Ontario Child Benefit that Laurel was talking about earlier. The second social assistance program is the Ontario Disability Support Program, or ODSP. This is a program that was introduced, well, both of these programs were introduced by the Harris government, and ODSP was intended to take people with disabilities off welfare. In some ways it does do that, but in many other ways it doesn't. And again, the monthly amounts for a single individual and for a single parent with 2 children are there on your screen, and you can think about that in relation to your own incomes and to the incomes of, well, in particular, the incomes of the 1%. In April, just to give you a sense of how many people we're talking about in Ontario, in April of this year, 470,000 people were on OW in Ontario. That's both the individual applicants and their dependents, spouses and children. And 412,000 relied on the Ontario Disability Support Program. So that's nearly, well, that's 882,000 Ontarians. That's about 7% of the provincial population. So I'm here tonight because a really important part of reducing economic inequality is, you know, and we've talked some about some of the ways to reduce income inequality by addressing problems at the top end of the income scale, but some of these folks are living at the very bottom end of the income scale, and so increasing income security for people on social assistance is an obvious an important way to increase economic equality. So I have 4 headlines. These are boy, it was tough getting this down. We've been working through the Social Assistance Review on a number of technical recommendations and revisionings and all kinds of other thought experiments. So getting it down to sort of 4 major recommendations was pretty tough, but these are 4 of the most important ones. We need to move social assistance in Ontario, and this is both Ontario Works and the Ontario Disability Support Program, from inadequacy to decent incomes. The first thing that you will hear, and of course what I said on the first slide, is that incomes are absolutely inadequate for people on social assistance in this province. But this is not just an oversight. When Ontario Works was created back in 1995, the benefits were cut by 22% from the previous program. It was a deliberate policy choice to make Ontario Works benefits below subsistence levels. This was the idea was, well, if we don't give people very much money, then they'll go get a job. They just need that incentive. There's also been an assumption that people on Ontario Works have a short-term reliance on the program, that everybody is job ready, that everybody just needs some incentive to go off and get a job. But of course, there are many diverse needs among the people who rely on Ontario Works. For example, 10 to 15% of people who are on the Ontario Works caseload, I hate that word, but 10 to 15% of people who rely on Ontario Works have multiple barriers to employment, and they need long-term support. So this is not a short-term sort of temporary program. ODSP benefits are slightly higher, but their purchasing power was allowed to erode for many years until the Liberals took power, and they're certainly not sufficient for long-term support, which many people with disabilities need. They're still below the poverty line, and as one disability advocate said to us, the incomes cover subsistence. I mean, if you're going to a food bank in addition, but they don't provide anything for social inclusion. Benefits don't allow for improved income above a poverty level ceiling. That is, you're consigned to live in poverty on OW and ODSP because of the variety of deductions that are made from your benefits. If you have employment income, if you get child support, if you get spousal support, and a variety of other sources of income. You have to get rid of most of your assets in order to qualify for assistance. There's been an erosion of purchasing power. The small increases, yearly increases that we've seen since 2003 are not enough to make up for the rising cost of living. And there have been an elimination of additional benefits, particularly as I talked about just earlier with the housing benefits. People live in a constant state of economic precarity. And as I'm sure we all know, inadequacy of incomes deepens poverty and social exclusion and is itself a barrier to employment. There are some built-in perversities and internal inconsistencies in these programs. So increasing income security for people on social assistance requires adequacy as a foundation of any income support program. But of course, reforming social assistance and ensuring income security isn't just about income. And you can just ask anyone who has ever relied on either of these programs that living on these programs there's a lot of problems in terms of income, but income security depends on a lot of other issues. So one of our recommendations is to move the systems from surveillance and punishment to dignity and support. There are more than 800 rules in the income security in the social assistance system at present, and contravention of these rules is almost inevitable. The contravention of the rules, of course, leads to overpayment assessments, so you have to pay a bunch of money back. There's income precarity from month to month. You never know how much you're going to get. It can lead to cancellation of benefits outright. They send you a nice little letter, sorry you're cut off. It can also lead to fraud charges. Policing of compliance with these rules requires an intrusive regime of surveillance. Whoops. But not just sort of surveillance of kind of who you are and what your social insurance number is, but some of the most intimate details of your personal life. For example, who you live with and whether or not you are in an intimate relationship with that person, and therefore whether or not they have a responsibility, an economic responsibility for you. Caseworkers spend too much of their time enforcing these rules, and so there's very little time left to provide the kinds of supports that people actually need. And of course, this is some of these rules are unbelievable. People are punished financially when in fact what they need is supports. There's a great little rule in social assistance that if your child drops out of school, they'll cut your benefits. You know, what do you say about that one? The province says that the rule exists in order to encourage children to stay in school. I don't know how they think that that's going to work. So increasing income security also requires programs that treat people with respect and provide appropriate and flexible supports. We need to move from a system of first available job or unavailable supports to sustainable employment. Now, not everybody's going to be able to work, so working to whatever degree you can or you want to or is good for your social inclusion is one of the aspects of this recommendation. As you probably know, Ontario Works is based on a mandatory workfare model. People on OW have to sign a participation agreement as a condition of continuing eligibility. So it's not just off the top. You have to be doing these activities. You have to agree to do activities throughout your tenure on OW. You have to make a reasonable effort to find and maintain full-time work or approved work-related activities, and failure to comply with this means suspension or cancellation of your benefits. There are some exemptions, but overall the shortest route to employment theory, much like trickle-down economic theory, doesn't really work. The idea is that immediate labor force entry, regardless of job quality or level of wages, increases attachment and eventually leads to employment success, and this has been widely discredited. ODSP provides employment supports and services. People are exempt from participation agreements, but supports are not usually available to people who need them in terms of their employment. Increasing income security requires, at the bottom there, focusing on personalized assessment. Anyway, you can read that. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to try to get through this quickly. I've got one more slide. Our fourth recommendation is from denial by design to access, and this particularly refers to ODSP. ODSP eligibility requires both financial and a medical test. The financial test is very similar to that on OW, but there are higher asset levels. And the medical test is that you must provide medical verification of a disability that will last for more than 1 year and which substantially restricts your ability to attend to personal care, function in the community, or function in the workplace. This is a very important definition of disability, by the way, and it's one that we don't want to see eroded because it's not purely based on employability. And, you know, if you want to talk about that, or we can connect later and we can have that discussion. But, of course, the administrative process required to prove medical eligibility itself is a barrier to access. So increasing income security requires removing systemic barriers to access to benefits. And just to leave you with some homework, where is my seventh? Did I leave one there? I can just read it here. So your homework, your task, if you choose to accept it, which I hope you will, is, as I said, the Social Assistance Review recommendations are coming out in September. This is a very important opportunity for reform. One message you might take away is that ODSP sucks less than OW. It still sucks, but it sucks less. However, the Social Assistance Review has largely been focused on ODSP reforms rather than transforming OW, which is really the program that needs to be fixed. So your role as members of the public is to keep an eye on government as reforms are implemented and ensure their accountability based on an income equality framework. Because social assistance policy should increase income inequality and not make things worse. Thanks very much.